Oh, boy. There's a poignant story told about an inscription found on the walls of a hidden cellar, believed to be the words of a Jewish Holocaust survivor. The words were these: I believe in the sun, though it be dark. I believe in God, though he be silent. I believe in neighborly love, though it be unable to reveal itself. Though the exact origin of this story is debated, and although we might express our beliefs and hopes with different words, I find it to be a beautiful illustration in which to ground what I share with you today. These words and that image of someone carving their hopes onto a wall while in the most dire of circumstances, these words articulate the possibility of human resilience even in the darkest times and places. A determination to believe in realities and outcomes that are not visible, to take those ingredients and make something happen, a capacity to find light even in times of despair. I'm also grounding my words today in the work of Rebecca Solnit, and in particular her book, Hope in the Dark, from which Jenna shared a couple of passages. Her book is a powerful commentary on change. Solnit recalls the many, many incredible things that have happened throughout history, reminding us that progress toward peace and justice is not only possible, but it really actually happens. The first edition of this book was published in 2004. I can't remember what was even happening then. And the second edition, which has the wonderful new subtitle, Untold History's Wild Possibilities, was published in early 2016, months before the first election of Donald Trump as US president. I happened to read this book shortly thereafter. The nonfiction book club at my previous congregation was reading it. And it was a time when I thought we were in the worst of times. Sadly, 2016 was not the worst of times. At the Interfaith Thanksgiving service at the Basilica, Reverend Elijah McDavid III used a text from the Hebrew Torah, the story of the Exodus. That story tells of a people, the Israelites, following a scrappy leader, Moses, and just barely escaping their oppressors by crossing a sea. But where they ended up kind of surprised them. They were in a wilderness, and they had not packed provisions, and they wandered looking for a new promised homeland for 40 years. Now, maybe that seems an odd choice of a text for a Thanksgiving service, but Reverend McDavid had a unique take on the story, focusing on the time after the Israelites crossed the Red Sea and during the time when they were wandering in the desert, searching for that promised land. His Thanksgiving message was about their complaints and their whining, which obliterated their complaints and whining, which obliterated the reality that they had enough in the daily provisions of bread that their God was providing. Be grateful for having enough, he preached. I'm thinking about that story again today, but in a different way. I'm thinking about how we too are currently wandering in a desolate place. We too have gone out on a kind of limb, seeking justice, working at the edges, working to escape the systems of white supremacy and colonialism and homophobia and all the other things, believing that we could change the world, seeing the possibility of a promised land where everyone had enough and no one was targeted for their identity or their race or their immigration status. And we have, not really so long ago, experienced some victories and have seen how taking some risks and standing up for the voiceless and advocating for more inclusive and compassionate laws and policies was actually an effective strategy. It worked. Going out into the unknown and pushing for change seemed like realistic behavior, doable. But now we're lost, wandering, feeling hopeless. The promised land seems very far away, even unattainable. So where is hope now? And how could it possibly help us? How can what is essentially an attitude, a way of seeing the world, how can that matter in the midst of a society in crisis? To choose to hope can feel pointless and powerless when the forces of evil are running rampant. I don't know if it's that way for you, but isn't it easy to spend our time shaking our heads and complaining, despairing, leaning toward giving up, just whining? Solnit says that to hope is to accept despair, not as an emotion, to accept despair as an emotion, but not as an analysis. Despair is not an analysis. It's not a way to look clearly at the data. That is, not if we can acknowledge that what is unlikely is possible, and that what seems likely is not inevitable, that because something is difficult doesn't mean that it's impossible. Author Parker Palmer speaks of how we often exist in a place somewhere between corrosive cynicism and irrelevant idealism. It's that pessimism and optimism that Jenna read about. He calls it the tragic gap. And it's been my experience that many Unitarian Universalists reject hope as kind of vapid Pollyannaism or irrelevant idealism, and tend to lean a little more toward that corrosive cynicism. Because we cannot see and touch yet, anyway, possibilities. Because we can't see and touch them, it means to us that they cannot be relied upon or proven. I think we work so hard to be pragmatic and realistic, trying so hard to not rely on anything supernatural or mysterious, that we forget that we are the people who insist on the human potential to solve human problems. We're not powerless. We're not without agency. We're not wandering alone. And even in the dark places, we don't have to sink into corrosive cynicism. To choose hope is to choose not to despair. To choose hope is, rather like a plant turning toward the sun, to turn toward the reality that the world is always dynamically changing and that things can change. They will change. In these days, the actions of the powerful and the official blind us and make us think that there's nothing else for us to focus on. All of this terror is so bright that we cannot see the people and the helpers who are right next to us. We can't seem to see a way to get out of that blinding light and move into those shadowy places where other powers are at work. Solnit says that hope grows in the dark. The dark is where we need hope the most. Hope grows in the dark, and that the grounds for hope are in the shadows, that they're in the people who are inventing the world while no one else looks, who themselves don't know yet whether they will have any effect. Hope lies in the people we have not heard of yet, who might be the next Cesar Chavez, the next Noam Chomsky, the next Cindy Sheehan, or become something you cannot yet imagine. We have to imagine what's happening in the background, off stage, out of the light. Because in this epic struggle between light and dark, she writes, it's in the places away from the light, in the realm of the anonymous, the unseen, the officially powerless, the visionaries and subversives in the shadows. This is where hope can be found. It's like mushrooms. We can be like those mushrooms, growing in the most unlikely and hidden places. And in hoping, actually because of our hope, we're then able to turn away from that blinding light of chaos and to do what needs to be done and to keep battling debilitating despair. And anything we can do is enough. We don't need to do it all. because there are others around us doing their part too. We are on this journey with so many others. So notice that. I mean, look around this room. Don't let the fact that you can't do it all, or the fact that you can't see immediate results, stop you from doing what you can. Show up for a protest, bring groceries to someone who can't go to the store, open doors, literally and figuratively, for our neighbors. Bake. Take the ingredients of your life and make something. Live your values. Put love at the center of what you do. Here's Solnit again. Uprisings and revolutions are often considered to be spontaneous, but less visible long-term organizing and groundwork or underground work often is what lays the foundation. What you can do may seem insignificant or peripheral or even unseen, but all of it together, all of this that we're doing, will upend any assumptions about who and what matters, who should be heard and believed, and who has rights. Because hope is the fuel that makes it possible for us to believe in what we cannot yet see, and to take that next step, and then the next, and the next. Always moving toward what can be, toward our vision of a world of peace and justice. I would like to imagine that we can be the people who in these dark times painstakingly etch our hope onto the walls of the greed and the power and the inhumanity that seems to surround us. In choosing hope, corrosive cynicism and despair cannot disable or incapacitate us. And I believe that even in this dark place, we can find our power to continue insisting that change is possible, that the sun will shine, the bread will rise, that a community of goodwill and inclusion will rise again. To hope is to make that vision possible.